So a few weeks ago, Amelia and I went out in central London talking to you guys about your views on all things banking, trying to get a sense of the things that you like, the things you don't like, everything from customer service through to freebies and stuff like that. And what we're going to do in this episode is just take you through those videos. We've made them into sort of short compilations of each question, which we've been sharing on our TikTok and Instagram accounts. And we thought it'd be quite good to react to them, to give our opinions on what they say, kind of point out the stuff that's really good, maybe suggest some areas where they possibly could do things a little bit different or things they weren't necessarily across, which will hopefully help you guys at home as well when sort of faced with the same kind of questions. Amelia, do you want to quickly share what the format is a little bit for everyone who's, particularly those people listening on the podcast, they know what's going on?
Yeah, sure. So we approached strangers on the street and invited them to play a bit of a game with us, which involved red and green flags. So you will hear, if you're listening on the podcast, I'm asking people statements, and if they agree with it, they will wave a green flag. And if they don't, it will be the red flag. Obviously, you can't see that. So you will hear noises. The red flag, as I remember, is or something kind of red flaggy. And the green flag is a more of a do-do-do-do. Yeah, that's my interpretation for all of you.
Okay, so look at the first question.
It has a brilliant app, but no branches.
Yeah, green flag.
We got a split.
You're ancient. Well, it depends.
Tell me more.
I love a digital first bank for the convenience of it.
I actually prefer doing things over my app. So like, for example, getting the checks paid, they have it now on the app, which is great.
My grandparents love to give cash and I can't pay that in.
I never really go into the branch. I just enjoy doing everything on the app.
Their online customer service is really good, so it's okay not to have a branch. Also, it just saves me so much time.
I've tried to go into the branch and they'll tell me there's like a waiting list for a week anyway. So
Worse than a doctor's surgery.
I mean, it is almost as bad, isn't it? It's kind of, if you do ever need to go, it's harder and harder and harder to get an appointment, which is, I guess, why a lot of people aren't, they don't use it very often, don't use the branches, so they're not bothered if it's not there at all, because the experience is bad when they do use it.
Yeah, and my pet peeve, I mean, it's just like a UK-wide thing, but when like the banking opening hours are the same as your working hours and all the other hours, it's like, why are we all working at the same time? This is ridiculous. And a problem that I had when I lived in London, you'd like to think that there are branches everywhere, but there aren't. They're kind of focused in the centre. And for me, where I lived in South London, I was like, that isn't really any of my banking branch near me. So it was a real challenge to be like, oh, I can't even pop out on my lunch break because it's such a distance. And, what they're saying really makes sense, doesn't it? It's like these digital first banks that have everything you need because they have been made for exactly that. They never had the branches in the first place, so they know exactly what you want. They've incorporated it in the technology. And yeah, they're kind of there's now no need to go to a branch because everything's there, which of course isn't great for the remaining branches because the less that they're used, the more likely they are to disappear.
Yeah, it's interesting. There was a couple of things there, like the guy, the only person there who said they didn't agree with this question, the only one who gave red flag, it was because he gets cash from his grandma or grandparents, which obviously, you think if there's no branch, what you're going to do with that. So you can understand why, he's a younger person, but there are lots of people out there who do deal in stuff which is, mainly just cash, or they don't want to do digital banking, online banking at all. And losing the branches is a big issue for them. So you can absolutely understand. I mean, interestingly, with that guy there, what he probably wasn't aware of, and maybe some of you listening at home might not be aware of, is that if you don't have a branch near you, whether it's a digital only bank or the more traditional bank has closed their branch, and you do have a post office, you can actually pay in cash and withdraw cash there. You can do checks as well, although most banks now let you do that on their app as well. So you actually can get around it. Most of the things with reasons we might want to use a branch, you probably don't need it as much anymore unless you aren't going digital. So if you're happy with online banking, app banking, yeah, probably doesn't really matter so much about having access. But I do think it's worth it if you can. Like we've covered quite a few times before that you can have more than one current account. And I always like to, if you can, if your town does have a branch of some kind of bank there, even if it's not your main bank, there's no harm just having an account with them and maybe having some money in there just in case something does go wrong with all the online banking or the app banking, that you can actually go in and talk to someone and maybe do something there if you need to.
And I will say as well, when I had to make a big transfer to buy my house, it was so reassuring going into a branch and doing it with a person. And I know I'm not alone with that. It might kind of sound like a kind of, something that perhaps, I don't know, my grandparents might prefer. But I promise you, yeah, going in and being like, actually, I need to make this, and I just want to make sure everything's gone all right. And yeah, and the person who was in the branch was really helpful and really reassuring as well. So yeah, there's definitely still a place, no matter how old you are, for different transactions, for different aspects of banking, for the face-to-face branch service, I think.
All right, next up, let's see what the next question is.
You can never speak to a person on the phone, but you get a quick response from the chatbot. Tell me more.
Controversial.
If I can't get a response from a person, I immediately think that I'm being scammed.
I don't know, like if I can like chat via text and it's not like automated, then like calm, fine with that. I'm not a massive like phone caller anyway. Like I prefer to just like read a text, like do it that way.
I guess it depends on how good the chatbot is as well.
Yeah.
If it gets you.
If it's automated, then it's like you're getting hit with the same responses when you're asking different questions, and that's so jarring. But like, if it's good and if it's an actual person, then no issues.
Oh, I like chatbots, but if I wanted to speak to someone, I'd want to speak to them quickly. One of my banking providers, every time I tried to call them, I actually raised a complaint because I was trying to complain about some fraud on my account, and I just couldn't get through to them. And they wouldn't investigate through a message that I sent. They're like, you have to call us. I was like, well, I'm trying to call you, but I couldn't call them. So that was very frustrating.
Red flag. Yeah, that's not great. I feel like customer service is all about the human interaction, and especially if it's something urgent, like you definitely need to have someone at the end of the line. Also, like, I don't know if it's actually a person or just ChatGPT, you know what I mean? Like I could just go to ChatGPT, which is great, but if I wanted a person, just be there,
Oh my God, I can feel like my blood pressure rise as I'm listening to that. Like I'm feeling the stress that I have felt trying to get something sorted, and the only option or the first instance is a chatbot. And like someone said, I don't know if it's a real person. I don't know if it's just code and it's acting as more of a triage system where it's like, okay, but oh my God, the number of times I've clicked on a chatbot and they give you the options and none of the things that I want are there. And I'm like, okay, I'm just going to type something. And it's like, oh, sorry, you need to pick from an option. I'm like, okay, there's more than just 7 things that could go wrong, like with this service. And yeah, really annoying.
I pretty much just type in talk to person, and I just keep typing in talk to person until hopefully I do get through to a person on the other end of the chat, because they never have the answers that you want. I find quite often as well that they're kind of like, let's say you do follow their thing and say, what do you want help on? You select that thing. They'll just direct you to the help page on their FAQs, which you've just come from because you've already looked at that, because you're not an idiot. You've searched, tried to find the answer yourself. You can't find the answer, which is why you want to talk to a person. And like that guy said, you end up going around in a circle, and they say, well, you should phone us. But, you can't half the time. You can't get that information to contact them. Or if you do, you want hold for so long. Yeah, I'm not surprised that most of them are annoyed about that as well. But again, it goes back to what we were talking about just now with the branches. They're not so fussed about not having a branch. But the reason I like a branch is if something does go wrong. It's a long time ago now, but I had a credit card cloned, and I was able to, my lunch break, just pop, because they're open during working hours, pop to my branch, Halifax at the time, and they managed to kind of like help me sort it out really quickly. I mean, this was a long time ago now. And now obviously you can do things a bit faster on the app and stuff, but I still like to have that access to a human when something is quite serious. Yeah, it's a right pain. There are also the newer apps often don't really have phone calls, or they send, I don't know if you've had this, so I had it with Starling. You go on the live chat and then they say, oh, I'll phone you back. And they try and get in a time for an appointment to call you back. But they give you a time. And if that's not convenient, you then got to message back and go back and forth, back and forth, back and forth. And half the time I'm just like, just call me, or let me call you and let's talk about it now, not kind of when your shifts next on shift in 3 days. Yeah, it's a big frustration.
Yeah, I think with I think what like a lot of those people were saying, and I agree with, is that we are wanting that reassurance that we have been heard or something's been registered or recorded. And I think when it comes to like fraud, or it comes to those more serious things, and with your money, it is serious. Even if you're asking a question because you want to know, and you want to know quite quickly. And I think with those chatbots or the kind of those features, I'm like, where's it going? Like, is it being recorded? Is there going to be some sort of record of this? And is there going to be an action at the end of it? Because I don't trust who's on the end of it. If it's, a machine, if it's a person, what's going to happen, how this fits into like the process. But then saying that, I've had issues calling my bank where, you have to dial a number to get through to a certain department, and then you have to dial another number, and then you're on hold. And then, you'll ask for kind of security information, and sometimes it's not to hand, or sometimes you might not know your number off by heart. And the issue I have is like, I have really bad signal in my house. So I'm kind of like, I can't do anything, which isn't the chatbot's fault or anyone else's fault. But I think what I'm getting at is like, it is so important to talk to someone immediately. And I think with banking, the process should be as smooth as possible. I appreciate some things have to be a bit sensitive and security protected, but I think there's that kind of, I just want to speak to a person who understands me, who is reassuring me that, an action is going to be taken immediately, which I think the chatbot is kind of always lacking, really.
Yeah. And I'm sure like people listening or watching this right now, they can relate to when you said about entering the security code information. I really hate it when they ask you to type it in. So you go through all that, your long card number and all these information, you type it all in. And then when you get through to the person, they ask you again anyway. Like, I've never had it where that's been fine. Like, just don't make me do that. Just let me jump through. And then they move you again. Like you said, then you move you to another department and you do it again. So you can have a phone call like 4 or 5 times you've shared the same information. Yeah, hate it. I mean, those 2 questions there we started with, they sort of obviously link closely into customer service. And it's something that I think often becomes a bit of an afterthought, doesn't it, with people when you're choosing a financial services. Certainly, for me, often when we come to other things later on, but tempted more by like the features of the app, like how good the app is there, or extra freebies and giveaways. But customer service really probably should be one of the things we do take much more seriously than we already do, because when things go wrong, they can, that guy talked about raising a complaint. I know you've raised complaints with like ISA providers recently. You kind of want that solved as quickly as you can and as simply as you can. Let's move on to the next one, shall we? And this one, you mentioned security. This one's about security.
Your account feels secure, but you have to jump through hoops to transfer your money.
Depends on what hoops, though.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
Green and red and green. If you're putting me through like 1,000,001 hoops and I don't know when it's going to end, if the process is so long, then red flag, because time is money. If the hoops equate to how secure I feel about you dealing with my money, and there's a balance between how much time I'm spending, then green flag, like, it's okay.
Yeah.
Yeah?
Oh, I hate that. Yeah, make it super convenient. Still secure, but super convenient.
Mm-hmm.
So I want my cake and I want to eat it at the same time.
Don't we all?
I don't like too many hoops, but I guess it's there for a reason. But yeah, it's a bit frustrating when you've got to do like 5 different things just to send someone some money.
Yeah, it depends on the hoops. If it's like a password, Face ID, fine. If it's, I know some banks use some other device. I can't be carrying that around if like I'm away.
Oh, he's talking about the card reader. I hate the card reader.
I think
it too. Like most of the big banks now have like phased it out. I don't think you need to use it, at least for most things. Nationwide were one of the last ones that really hadn't. I think they've sort of just been getting rid of it for most transactions now. I think sometimes you might need it if things, you go wrong or whatever. But hated the card reader so much. It's why I left Nationwide years ago. It was my main bank. Big fan of Nationwide simply because it's quite an ethical one, has some good features, has good customer service. But every time I wanted to transfer money, oh my word. So I ditched it and went away.
I remember being a student and having it, and I was just like moving house every year, losing it. It was in a drawer. I think at one point I then had like 3, and I was like, oh my God, this like little mini calculator that was just like haunting my nightmares. I was like, I'm done with it. But I think what's interesting about this question is when everything is good, you know what I mean? When everything feels fine, you're not getting scammed, you're making payments, like everyone's like, yeah, I love it. It's simple, it's straightforward. It doesn't take me any time to make transfers or do kind of more kind of sensitive transactions. But the minute something goes wrong, that is when people are just like, why isn't there more to protect me? Why isn't there more to protect my money? It's kind of a bit like travel insurance, isn't it? It's like, oh, some people might think it's a waste of money until something goes wrong and they wish they had it. And I think, yeah, like heaven forbid, I don't want anyone to get scammed, but I do think there is a balance and there is a fine line. And I think, yeah, we're kind of, the world is getting faster. We're all moving faster. Our expectations are getting higher and we want things done instantly. But at the same time, scammers are getting quicker and getting more sophisticated, and they are finding loopholes and they are finding ways around it. So, especially when it comes to huge purchases, for example, like sending your money for a house deposit, you know what I mean? Like those kind of massive life-changing amounts. Like for me, I don't think I would mind too much if for, those kind of transactions, there are a few extra checks. I used to write quite a lot about solicitor scams, which was more of kind of like, someone receiving an email from someone pretending to be their solicitor and then transferring money to the wrong account because it's the one owned by the scammer. And at the time, we didn't have confirmation of payee. We didn't kind of have, those kind of extra checks along the way. But we also didn't have any kind of reimbursement scheme. And people were just like, oh my God, why didn't the bank do more to protect my money? And it was like awful. Like, oh my God, I used to speak to so many people. And I think the argument from the bank and also the solicitors firms, because they were like, oh, we're emailing people the documents now because people don't want to wait for it coming through the post. And I think now some solicitors firms have actually gone back to sending the documents by post because it's safer than potentially getting intercepted over email. So I don't know. I think we have to be quite mindful of, the difference between when things are going well and when things are not going well, and kind of, I guess, manage our expectations with both kind of scenarios in mind.
Yeah, totally. I mean, just a little tip there for people. I mean, hopefully most people know this already, but if they are being, whether it's email or the post, actually, if they're being sent invoices for large amounts of money, is always to phone them up and make sure you find another number as well. Don't just go by the one that's on the email or the letter, because that could have been forged by scammers as well. Phone them up and get them to confirm those bank details before you transfer the money, because these huge amounts of money that people do lose from these scams. I think, and I ranted about the card reader a moment ago, but I've recently, you wrote a fantastic article. You spoke to one of our followers who'd had his phone stolen, and when his phone was nicked, he also had about 20 grand stolen. He wrote an article about that. You've also interviewed him and an expert on the podcast on YouTube. So please do check out that episode if you haven't already, because it's really, really important stuff. But that freaked me out a little bit. And that made me, again, think a bit more about, actually, I do want a few more hoops, because it's not that often that I'm going to need to do anything on a large scale. I think, smaller limits and the ability to be able to set what that threshold is. You don't want to have to, so every time you set up a new payee, having to go through that faff. You don't want to be, spending a few £100 or maybe even £1,000 or something like that. If you spend that, you don't want that. But if you go regularly spend a lot of money, or spend large amounts of money, or sending large amounts of money, then yeah, absolutely. Or weird, infrequent stuff. I think it's better to have a bit of faff, just because, the downside is, like that guy Andy who spoke to you found huge amounts of money, huge amount of distress. So something definitely that everyone should be taking more seriously. And I wonder if we did that, ask those same questions in a year's time, whether people will have the same views or not, if these scams and these crimes continue in the way they have done over the last few months.
Yeah, and I think what they were kind of talking about was, the small sums that you're sending to your friends, especially kind of like as we've become more digital, and a lot of, the bank's been quite good at that in terms of like those quick transfers, maybe between you and your partner, or, your friends and those kind of things. But yeah, for a long time after writing all of those scam stories, I was like crazy about it. I was like, it's a bit different now with confirmation of payee, which is, kind of, I think, a really good measure. But it's not kind of 100% foolproof. There's sort of anomalies in it. But I would send a small amount to like this solicitor or kind of whatever the transaction I was doing. It used to be £1, but I was like, if I keep saying £1, then the fraudster's going to know that I'm sending £1. So it was like, I don't know, 67p or something. And then I'd ring up the, genuine firm, and I'd be like, just want to check that you've had this money through. Can you just confirm the amount? And they must have thought I was really paranoid and really cautious. But I was like, I don't care. tell me what you got. And it's like, okay, 67p has arrived in our account. It's like, great, you'll get the rest.
Yeah, why not? It's big money. Big money. It's important to think about in those situations. Right, next up, we've got a question around ethics.
The bank offers a top interest rate but invests in fossil fuels. You seem unsure.
I am unsure. Well, it depends on how they're investing in fossil fuels and what nature of it. High interest rates are good. I guess the question kind of boils down to whether the bank's ethical or not. And for me, that's massively important. Mm-hmm. I think being ethical in the banking sector, I'm going to say this because it's actually my job to do this. It's a license to trade, to be impactful and invest in the communities that you're in and look after the communities that your customers come from. If you don't do that, then I think you actually cease to have any relevance to your customer base. So I don't think it's just a nice to have. I think it's now a must have.
Oh, no way. Yeah. But it's still very hard, especially that there isn't a lot of transparency. I have to dig very deep into finding out where is my money like going and where is it invested. In general, of course, I just want to optimize for like the highest interest, but it would be good if I can find more information readily available for me.
I buy diesel for my car. I can't look down on others for doing the same. I still need to use it at the minute.
Yeah, times it's tough. Got to use the best interest rates you can.
Tell me more.
I don't know, it's a hard one, isn't it? Like, I wouldn't say when it comes to banking, it's the first thing I maybe like consider. I don't really know why. I guess it's like the crossover between the two is not that. I guess it is relevant. Like you see Barclays with like red paint all over every week down here. Yeah, I don't know. It's not like the first thing in my head. I don't feel like passionately like one way about it or another.
I think it's when I'm looking to go for a bank, it's not the first thing I look into. It's more if I hear something horrible about it.
Yeah, I think what the girls were saying at the end there about they don't really think about it. That's the case, I think, so much with our financial services, whatever it is. You don't really, it's easy to think about it with your recycling or your flights or whatever else it might be. But yeah, a lot of people still don't, figure out that there's actually your money when you give it to a bank, it could be used for all sorts of things.
Yeah, and I think the broader question of ethics, especially now in like a cost of living crisis, I think is, I think people who care about it, who are maybe even struggling about how far of a priority it is. So, we all kind of have a basic needs, and we would love to kind of get our free trade, ethical produced kind of items and products in our lives, and banking is another one of those things that should we would love to kind of prioritize the ethics of it. But I think sometimes it is a struggle for a lot of people, and I know that I could be better at it. Yeah. I think I try and do the best I can with kind of everything as a kind of a broad spectrum of like being mindful about what I consume and what I buy and kind of what it means. But I kind of can't. Yeah, it's sort of one of those things where it's like there's the balance again of how much time and how much more am I paying, or how much is it kind of in terms of the expenses and stuff, like where it kind of comes in my life. But yeah, I think with banking, I think you want to kind of see your bank as a kind of an ethical whole, but that could be, its vulnerable customer policy. That could be, the customer service. That could be where it is investing the money. It can be what it's doing for the community. So there's a huge range of ways that a bank could be an ethical bank, including, what it does for the environment and how green it is. But I think, I don't want to kind of demonize people when it's not a priority, or it's not as much of a priority as it is for others.
Yeah, I find this one of those things that it's very hard to sort of know a lot of the time what's happening with your money. And when I first sort of discovered this, however many years ago it was, that this kind of stuff was happening with my money, many of the sort of most, if not most of the banks, your money could well be used for investing in things like the arms trade or new oil pipelines and things like that. And if you're someone who doesn't agree with that, or does try and do things elsewhere, particularly environmentally, you might find that actually, this isn't just about your savings and your current account, it's about your pension and all sorts of things. That money could be doing a lot more damage than the good that you're doing elsewhere. So if you are someone who's particularly interested in those things, I think it's important this is something that could be happening. and maybe take that time and effort to try and find those alternatives. I guess the shorthand that we often sort of tell people about is building societies, simply because building societies, most of the money that they have, it's in the name, isn't it? It's being used to help them with mortgages. So either offering lower mortgage rates or whatever it might be. So their money isn't going out to these other areas. And often because they're kind of generally owned by their members, there's often a little bit more of that kind of cooperative sensibility there and stuff. But they're not all going to be perfect. Nationwide is, of all the big guys, that's one of the best ones out there. But it still gets challenged quite often on kind of that the pay for the chief executives and things like that. But you've got to think about it. In that kind of world, you want someone to be running it who's going to be good at it. You don't want it to be, the people that off the best salary is going to go elsewhere, so you get someone not very good, because it's not going to give the best returns for the members either. So it's not always going to be perfect, but certainly something I think if you're interested to consider. But I also thought was really interesting from those responses. Those two young lads, they were like, it's not really something that bothers me. Like, I drive a diesel car, I do these things, just getting by. And do you know what? If that's how you feel about it, that's absolutely fine, isn't it? It's just about, understanding what happens with your money and having a greater understanding of that, and then making your own decisions there. And like you said, for a lot of people, you can't right now still have the luxury of making those decisions. And it's about picking, if you do, where that goes, exactly, what you're going to do with your money, whether it's spending less or making less in different ways, whether that's often going to come at a sacrifice for something else. Right, next question is around our parents.
Your parents bank there?
Yeah, green flag. Yeah, I trust my parents. So yeah, why not? It saves me time and research, so yeah.
Trust my dad. Trust my dad with it all. Feel like he's got this far, he's doing something right. They can also give me all the information, so I don't need to try and ask the bank for all of it. Yeah. I can kind of just say to them, like, oh, please, please tell me what to do here. I feel like it's natural as well. Like, you just follow in the same suit of your parents. I feel like that's just an expected thing, really. Maybe when you get a bit older and you start taking more interest, or if that's the field of work that you're in, maybe it'd be like something you'd think about changing. But I guess, like, if it's worked for you this far and your parents are happy with it, you're likely going to be happy with it.
I don't care.
What's not bothered? Both.
Yeah, it doesn't make a difference.
Yeah, no.
Oh, no.
No, don't trust your parents.
No, I think it's different here in different demographics, and people would serve them in a different way than how I want to be served, for sure. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
A lot of green flags there.
I know, what the hell? People just have really, really financially astute, trustworthy parents. Yeah, I'm surprised.
Yeah. I guess it's that thing, isn't it? Again, a lot of the people we spoke to who happened to be around were sort of, I would say, in their sort of early mid-20s. And maybe just at that stage of life where it's kind of like, I haven't even got my head around so many things yet. Finance and banking, it's like, whatever, it doesn't really matter. And yeah, you still believe that your parents know best. Then I say maybe they have got really savvy folks, but broadly speaking, it's that kind of belief which actually could be doing you out of a much better banking experience by finding the thing the woman at the end said that's right for you.
Yeah, definitely. And I'm kind of thinking about my parents, and I got a RBS bank account when I was 15 because my mum had one. I had it for my first job, and I think she's still with it. You know what I mean? And I think it's that there's like those statistics where it's like, you're more likely to dump your boyfriend than dump your bank. And that is as a result because you've got the same bank account as your parents, because they can, they were like, oh, you're young, you don't know anything, have this bank account. And you're like, okay, cool, I don't know anything, I'll have this bank account. And then you never leave it. Or it takes you like a really long time, like 10 years to kind of like work out that it's not the best one just because your parents said it was. Yeah. And I think, I don't know, recent conversations that I've had with my mum, and my mum's amazing, and I'm not kind of like being shady. She is amazing, but yeah, she's got a completely different experience of the banking system. Like, she's kind of, I remember not having internet, so she remembers a life without internet and, searching for the best deals or kind of engaging in conversations about, the challenger banks that emerged in 2015 and were kind of offering much better rates. And that was kind of the start of the us versus them, as in like the dusty old high street and the rates that they were offering, because there wasn't really much competition. And then all of these, digital first, as we've mentioned before, banks who are like, we can afford to offer you better rates because we don't have these dusty old branches. And I think, my mum and perhaps people in her generation were a bit suspicious and a bit, I don't trust this digital first approach. Like, I'm not even that comfortable on my phone anyway. I want to have the kind of the physical presence of a bank that's been there for years, that's I can trust with my money. And I think a bit of that still lingers with my mum. She's now talking about maybe getting a better bank, like a digital first kind of app-based bank, but she thinks that I can set it up for her. And I'm like, no, it's going to have to be registered to your smartphone, and you are going to have to understand how to do it because I can't be with you all the time. So, yeah, I think maybe it's because I am a bit older, but now when it's kind of, my grandparents, again, like they've done really well. They're like, they've done well with their lives and I trust them and I love them. But I think we would have very different understandings of what would make like a good bank. And I'm doing quote marks for the listeners. Like, in terms of our expectations and what we consider to be good service or a good rate or a safe kind of bank, I think they would really struggle as well. And so if they gave me recommendations, I'd be like, okay, thank you for those, but I'm looking for something a bit different, I think.
Yeah. I mean, it's not to say that parents can't have fantastic and do and should share sort of, their own banking experiences. Like, my mum's always been fantastic at this kind of stuff. And, I wouldn't have had an ISA in my early 20s when they were that, amongst the best, for your savings and things like that without, her. And she was a regular witch reader and all these kind of things. So definitely some people, we might have struck lucky with those people all having that, really sensible and engaged parents. So definitely don't ignore, we're not saying ignore, other parents' views. In fact, the whole point of all of this is to get everyone talking about it and discussing, the good and the bad experiences you have with your financial providers, and even anyone even broader than that as well. But yeah, I definitely think, if you've still, whatever age, and we know that from people watching and listening to this now, we've got people from 18 to 80, there's a huge range of people who regularly sort of tune in. Do just sort of think about it. If that is the reason why you've got it, is just have a look around and see if there is maybe a better option for you. And obviously we've got details, becleveryourcash.com/banks and all the different bank switching deals, and we'll come to that in a second. And also the different best savings accounts, best current accounts, best cards, or there could be better options for you. So it's definitely worth thinking about that. But let's move on to the last question now. And this is, as I say, around bank switching.
A bank offers you £150 to switch to it.
Oh. Maybe it's just they're spending for customer acquisition and they're up and coming. So if it's a new bank, they're up and coming, maybe I would just sign up and put a little bit of money there, or see how the experience is with money transfers, like we spoke about it before. But 100%, if I can take the 150 pounds, I will take that. Yes. Big yes. I'm really poor. There would be a lot of things to consider as well. If the bank's got a bad rep, then 150 quid in the moment. But would I do it for 150 quid and then swap back? Yes. Yeah, I would. That's exactly what I do. Get the money. Get the money and go.
Either really. It depends how good the bank is and what they're offering. I don't want to be conned by £150 to then have really bad customer service. So yeah, it depends. If it was someone I would consider transferring to anyway, then the £150 just becomes the sweetener, and then that'd be totally fine by me.
That's really positive, isn't it? I'm really pleased. And obviously, getting the free cash. I mean, most people watching and listening to this right now, you're following us probably via some kind of bank switching promotion or us telling you about it, or at least you know about it because we shared about it. So that kind of feels like a no-brainer. But I was really pleased to hear those people talking about, actually thinking about what else you get with the bank and not, either taking the money and then ditching them again, or, weighing up what other options there could be there and looking at that customer service.
Yeah. And I think there was sort of a degree of caution to it. It was sort of the £150, yes, please. But you know what I mean? I'm not just sort of going to be bribed, and I'm not going to kind of leap towards it into the fire without kind of knowing more about it. And I think, with these and, on the site, there's all the kind of tips and, about burner accounts and the fact, there have been kind of more hoops to jump through that have been introduced to kind of stop customers just like switching and then ditching. But you don't have to stay with it forever. You know, you can kind of wait the 90 days or kind of like do the kind of task that's required and keep that ticking along, or leave it once you've got the money. So there's nothing to kind of keep you. And, you know, we've heard from readers and kind of listeners and viewers who have told us, you know, in the space of 6 months, they've sort of like hopped around all the banks, scooped up all the incentives, and kind of, you know, and are just kind of carrying on. So yeah, you don't have to be kind of this, you can be, you know, a tart. You don't have to commit to one bank. You can move along.
Well, there you go. That's it. That's our kind of reactions to when we spoke to you guys out there on the street about your views on money. As I said, the big point about this is to try and get you to use your voice to share your views and your opinions on your banking experiences. So if this has inspired you, do talk to your mates, talk to your friends, your family members. Tell them what you like about things. Tell them what you don't like about places. Get them to tell you the good and bad of their experience as well. All that information is absolutely going to help you get much, much better value from your bank and your broader finances.